Telephone is ringing. Good afternoon, Jennifer McCreath speaking. Hi, how you doing? Oh, pretty good. Oh, no problem. Sure. Yes, I guess we'll start with my education. Went to high school in Etobicoke, Ontario, Etobicoke Collegiate. Then I went to community college, Humber College, Lakeshore campus, and got a diploma in business administration. And then I went to Athabasca University and took courses through correspondence to get a Bachelor of Administration Management. In between the schooling, there were a variety of work, short-term, shall we say, temporary assignments and contracts. Let me run through the list. 2 stints with the federal government in the civil service, Public Works as an accounting clerk, and Service Canada processing EI claims, interestingly enough. Then I also spent a couple years in the private sector working in the banking business. Public service with the provincial government of Ontario. A couple of years in records management with the Attorney General. Then I did 8 months with the Ontario Seniors Secretariat, where I helped them create a website called the Collaborative Portal, which basically allowed 3 levels of government to come together to create a one-stop shopping portal for seniors and organizations helping seniors. Then I spent just under a year with the Ontario Department of Consumer and Business Services, focusing on projects that dealt with business mapping and service integration and e-government collaboration. No, I also had a year in the Ontario IT department looking at identity authentication and authorization, trying to figure out how we could get all the provinces and the feds together recognizing the same type of online credentials. Then I moved to Newfoundland, spent a couple of years doing information protection analyst work at the senior level, privacy impact assessments. That was 2007. And part of my story is that shortly after I came out as a transgender person, that so-called safe and secure job disappeared. Then it took me a year to find any job at all, which ended up being several steps backward as a file clerk with the Attorney General here. Actually, technically they call it the Crown Attorney's Office. Then there was a massive budget cut of the civil service in Newfoundland in 2013, and they closed the whole record center. But I had enough seniority that I was able to use what's known as bumping. However, they sent me to a completely different environment, the police station, answering 911 phone calls. So I did that for about a year and a half. The shift work got to be a bit of a challenge, so I left under doctor's advice due to stress issues, and I've since spent time looking for work without much success. So most recently I've been going through my cupboard of sports collectibles, and I've actually been putting the stuff up on eBay to make a few bucks, so demonstrating my savviness and business expertise in an online environment. And sadly, I'm also now taking advantage of the credit that I've saved up over time and I'm literally living off credit and whatever I can make on eBay. And I'm glad that I can focus my full-time efforts on this campaign, and it would be great if I win. But come October 20th, I'm going to have to come up with a plan B if necessary. There was never a clear-cut reason. I slowly saw duties being taken away from me and given to other people. There were conversations with my superiors about, I guess, concerns and challenges faced by me going through a transition and having, I guess, concerns about whether that would impact not my ability to work, but the ability of our customers and clients to focus. And after, technically it was a temporary assignment that got extended 4 times with promises and hopes that it would go permanent, but they conveniently decided not to extend it at one point, technically stating that we're taking our business in a different direction and we no longer need a senior policy analyst. However, after I left, they created a new position at the management level, brought someone in who was doing pretty much the same work to my understanding. Now, I decided not to fight that. I did have a chat with the Human Rights Commission, and they said, you probably do have a good case because you've got documented evidence of being treated differently in specific emails about your transition. But I figured it's kind of a no-win situation. I'd rather leave on good terms, keep a positive job reference, which I did keep, and look at it at a different direction. The newspaper here found out and wanted to do a story, so instead of pointing the finger, I said, the story here is that there's an opportunity. We've got someone who's newly into transition, still has a lot of medical bills to pay for, and now they're looking for a job. It's going to be very interesting to see how this goes, and it's a great test and challenge to see how accepting of diversity Newfoundland is. This is now 2009. Well, it's a lot easier in 2015 than it was in 2008 and 2009. People, I think, from an individual perspective, are quite accepting and open-minded, but the challenges, I think, come and still continue to come from systemic and organizational and corporate levels. Government attitudes might be changing, but policies are not being amended to be made up to date. We're still not recognized as a minority group. If you apply for a government job federally, they ask you, do you fit any of these minority groups? The transgender is not even mentioned or recognized. I think there's still questions about stigma. What will people think if I hire a trans person? What will my clients think? What will my customers think? I've never had trouble finding work in my life before. Now all of a sudden I'm finishing runner-up in every job competition I have. And the few times I actually win a competition, there seems to be a veto from above canceling the competition. So it's really made me question what's really going on here. Is it because I'm trans, or is it because I'm a public figure who's now a vocal activist? Yeah. Well, let me give you a quick overview. I was raised in 2 homes. Well, my parents split up. My mother was a senior analyst, public servant for 27 years with the Ontario government, and my father was involved on the political side. He actually was a MP from 1988 to 1993 in Nova Scotia. He was part of the Mulroney Conservative government. And when Kim Campbell was named Prime Minister, she shuffled the cabinet and put my father in the cabinet. So my dad has the title Honorable Peter McCreath because he was Minister of Veterans Affairs. So, and I was a teenager back then, and I had a lot of time to visit Ottawa, observe the ongoings, watch question period, meet a lot of different MPs and political staffers. So I had a strong background and a strong interest in both government politics and public policy. 2013, I actually ran my first political campaign. I ran as a candidate in the municipal election for the city of St. John's, partially because I thought it would be a great way to further raise my profile. I'm thinking if I can't get hired, maybe if I throw my name into an election, I'll be able to demonstrate my skill set and experiences and ideas to a whole new different audience. Plus, I think it's a job. With all my activism, I kind of have been the face of transgender rights in all of Eastern Canada. Plus I had to go through the personal experience of negotiating government departments. Healthcare system, I've dealt with human rights, I've dealt with vital statistics. So it made a good fit. Nobody took me seriously as a candidate, and I went in 6 weeks from having practically no support to walking away with 17% of the popular vote against a very strong opponent. So that kind of gave me the idea, wow, okay. So here I am, fast forward to 2015, having joined and quit the federal NDP party between 2011 and 12. I guess I felt it's time to get off the fence of being neutral and get back into politics. There's so many people that don't pay attention, don't care, they don't believe in the system, and it's a critical time right now in Newfoundland. So I went to Elections Canada website and got a list of all 22 parties who are planning to run candidates in the election, and I went through them all, and when I saw Strength in Democracy, who they were, what they stood for, what their vision was, it immediately connected with me and felt this is exactly the type of people I want to work with. So I joined the party. I had a chat with some of the administrative people, and eventually had a phone call with one of the two MPs, and we just hit it off. We talked about ideas, values, and I guess the two things I really like about the party: one, there's not going to be any gag orders or muzzles on MPs. That's been a problem, I believe, with Stephen Harper, the way he's run his government. It upset the two MPs that quit their respective parties to form Strength and Democracy in the first place. I also like the idea that they're focusing on regional and rural development from within, as well as citizen engagement and participatory democracy. So even though the party kind of got rooted in Quebec, I saw that the values and the ideas would be transferable and applicable elsewhere in the country, including in Newfoundland and Labrador. And somehow we got talking about candidates, and we decided that it would be in the best interest, I guess, of the party and myself that we run me as a candidate. Yeah, I guess I should first point out even though I live in the city of St. John's, I'm running in the riding of Avalon, which is actually bordering St. John's and outside of St. John's. Part of the reason I'm doing that is because I feel the political interference we have seen from Justin Trudeau in the way he's handled the Scott Andrews affair and the way Stephen Harper disqualified Ches Crosby as a candidate for their party demonstrates two examples of how and why members or citizens of Avalon would be upset and would be more perhaps interested in the strength and democracy concept. I also spend a lot of I only live 8 kilometers from the border, so I'm fairly close to it. I spend a lot of time in the Avalon riding, doing both activism work and leisure personal time. I have a lot of friends out there. I've got my nose into a couple of nonprofit ventures out there that deal with culture and tourism. I also think there needs to be a major role in getting the 3 levels of government working better together, communicating. The past 10 years, our premiers and prime ministers have not gotten along. We're seeing urban sprawl fall out of St. John's and into the Avalon riding now. There are 2 towns that are fairly large now, Paradise and Conception Bay South, that are still part of Avalon, and there seems to be some major concerns and challenges with deciding, okay, we've seen this massive growth of residential development. What about infrastructure? We need to build more roads. There's no public transit. There's not a lot of stores, and not a jobs. So if you live in Paradise, if you live in Conception Bay South, you got to come into St. John's every day to do just about everything. There's also 3 towns a little further west, Carbonear, Harbour Grace, and Bay Roberts, which are, for their own right, are their own little metro area, and they seem to get underappreciated, ignored, and overlooked. And I think there's a lot of value in building up those towns to be their own quasi-metro area. I also want to focus on the rest of the riding, the rural little towns. The Avalon Peninsula, there's not a lot in the middle, just rock and mountains. But if you go around the edge, you got all these little towns that used to be thriving, huge fishing communities. Now we're down to just smaller, less than 100 people. There's been a push by the provincial government to resettle some of these communities. We'll pay you to actually move to St. John's so we don't have to provide government services to these outports. I know those people often feel neglected and ignored, so I want to reach out to all of them and get I want to get their issues and their solutions. I don't have all the answers, but I want to create a platform where they can have their voice heard. One final focus, I want to pay extra attention to the student and youth population. We keep hearing that young people don't vote. I want to get them voting. I want to get them paying attention, getting engaged in the conversations. The future is going to be in their hands. We're going to see a big shift in population when all the baby boomers retire, and we need to make sure that the next generation is ready to carry on, and in some ways clean up the damage perhaps done by the baby boomers. So I was actually over at Memorial University campus last week. They held a social function to watch that Maclean's debate, and there was 75 students that showed up to watch the debate. Ironically, I was the only candidate from any party out of any riding that went to that event. And it was kind of ironic. Strength and Democracy was not invited to that debate, but at least there was a rep physically in the room to talk to students and to tell them a little bit about the party. I am 41 years old. I still kind of feel like I'm a young professional, though. I've still got debt from my student years. I've bounced around from temp assignment to contract, but haven't really, and I think it's a struggle with a lot of people in that Gen X, we haven't really found that steady corporate ladder to climb. So I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life and my career. I think it's ironic and exciting that the diverse experiences I've had make me a very interesting candidate. A lot of people my age do not want to go into politics because they don't want to risk giving up a safe and secure job. Yes, there was. I'm excited about it, and in the early stages of my campaign, I've gone out of my way to make that fact known. I think it's important for everyone to realize that trans people still face significant challenges and oppression and discrimination. Running a campaign, getting accepted by one of the 6 political parties who has sitting MPs. Not too many of us are privileged enough to be in that position, and I think we need to see more trans people step forward or be given opportunities, not just in politics but in mainstream society, organizations. Heck, there's even a lot of gay lesbian organizations that like to use the LGBT acronym, but you don't see a lot of trans people on their board of directors. I also realize that getting attention to strength and democracy in Newfoundland is going to be a challenge because people will not consider us a major threat. We're a new party, we only have 2 MPs, it's just supposedly a Quebec party, and if I can use the trans novelty to bring some attention to the campaign, then that's something I'm quite happy and willing to do at this point. I hope as we progress into September and October that we can move beyond that and focus on me as a candidate with my credentials and my work experience, and that the party name will be out there enough that we don't keep having to have these 101 discussions. It's also inadvertently going to allow me to do education and awareness work for trans issues. Even if I don't even mention the word trans, when I travel around this rural riding and go to each little town, I bet you a lot of people are going to say, "You're the first transgender person I've ever met." And I'm excited and honored to take on that responsibility, and I hope I can do justice to, because they're gonna formulate opinions of the whole community based on just meeting me, and yeah. And I hope I can give balance. I mean, most of the trans stories you see on mainstream media focus on Caitlyn Jenner and Laverne Cox, and it's great that those folks are doing so much work in media, but they're like rich, famous people, and not all trans people have the resources that they do. And I think people need to see and learn the stories of someone who's floated between low and middle class and has struggled to get acceptance. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. And I'd like to hope that there's a lot of voters out there that can relate, will be able to relate to some of the struggles I've faced. I think the big 3 parties are too focused on the corporate and the rich vote. Even the NDP, every time I turn around, the newest NDP candidate is a leader of a union or a rich lawyer. I'm all for union issues, but a lot of the most oppressed and low-income people are not protected by unions, and I think the NDP tends to forget about those people sometimes. Yes, absolutely. Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah. I'll go through and send you maybe about 10. And I'll do that within the next half hour for you. No, I think we've covered just about everything. Glad to do it. All right, sounds good. All right, have a good day. Thank you. Bye. Wow, that's a big one, folks. That's Buzzfeed. That's going global. It's going all over the world. Wow. Busy day.